Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into some pretty interesting stuff from Clif High,
hmm
pulled from a couple of his YouTube videos, Sci-Fi World channel, both dropped on April 16th, 2025.
Right.
So our goal here is really to kind of shortcut things for you, pull out the main insights he's sharing, see the connections he's making.
Exactly. And figure out why it might matter. We're digging into his reports, his analysis.
See what threads we can find.
Yeah, it covers some, well, really unusual aerial stuff, but also potentially huge shifts in how we even see reality.
Okay, let's dive in then. So first up, something weird happened that morning, April 16th. Cliff himself saw something.
Yeah, he saw these strange lights.
Yeah.
Way up north from where he was, he mentioned seeing a beach nearby, so presumably coastal.
Uh-huh. And not just like a quick flash right
No,
now.
no. And what's interesting is it wasn't just him. The AI he uses, Grock.
Yeah.
It apparently flagged reports of similar sightings, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them.
Around the same time.
Exactly the same time frame. Up in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is, what, maybe 135, 150 miles north of his likely location?
Okay, so that timing and location definitely suggest a connection.
Seems likely, yeah. Something was happening up there.
And the details on these lights, they get pretty specific, don't they? High altitude.
Very high. Estimates were over 10,000 feet, maybe even as high as 35,000. And the Vancouver reports mentioned multiple lights.
Doing strange things.
Yeah, behaving oddly, splitting up, moving independently, not like planes. And some reports describe them as massive, maybe several miles across.
Miles.
Wow.
No.
And the light itself. This is fascinating. The tips of the lights were changing color.
How so?
Or reports say they shifted from green to yellow or orange, then red, and then even true brown and true magenta.
Brown and magenta. That's unusual.
Very. You don't usually see those hues in atmospheric phenomena or conventional aircraft lighting.
And this is where it gets even stranger with the energy analysis from Grock.
Right. Apparently, Grock calculated the energy needed to produce light like that, at that intensity.
Yeah.
And it came back as equivalent to several megatons.
Several megatons, like an atomic explosion.
That's the comparison, yeah. Which, immediately points away from any known human tech.
That's a whole different level. Suggests something truly advanced.
Absolutely. It kind of forces you to consider possibilities outside the usual box.
Does this tie into anything Grock mentioned before about hotspots?
It seems to. Grock had apparently flagged the 67th degree of latitude up in Alaska or Canada as a significant area for UAP activity previously.
So, while maybe an early thought was a Chinese balloon or something, these sightings fit that pattern better.
They seem to, yeah. Fits that earlier data point about that northern latitude being active.
So the big question then is, what are they? Aliens? Or this other idea she mentioned?
Well, yeah, the speculation goes towards either extraterrestrial craft or these alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs. Supposedly human-built, maybe by some breakaway group, using replicated tech.
Okay. Deep rabbit hole there.
Definitely outside the mainstream. But the observations are hard to explain conventionally.
And Cliff seems to think we'll see more of this soon, based on his charts.
Yeah, he mentioned looking at some kind of building tension chart, and it suggests an increase in UAP appearances coming up, specifically July and August.
Interesting timing. And he mentioned Washington State.
Apparently, Washington has the second highest number of UAP sightings per capita in the U.S., which is right there next to BC, of course.
Right, that regional connection again makes you wonder if whatever this is becoming, I don't know, bolder or just more active.
Could be. Or maybe we're just getting better at noticing or reporting it. Hard to say.
And one more thing from that day, the Russian Air Force activity near Alaska?
Yeah, that was mentioned too. Unusual activity near the border on the same day as the UAP sightings.
Connection. Or just coincidence.
Impossible to know for sure. But it definitely adds another layer of intrigue, doesn't it? Makes you wonder if, global powers are paying attention too.
For sure. Okay, so moving on from the sightings, the sources also talk about rejecting certain interpretations of events, right?
Yeah, a couple of things are specifically dismissed. One is this idea of a Bo Pauli's God scenario for April 20th.
What's that about, roughly?
It sounds like some kind of specific prediction, maybe tied to a religious interpretation, about a big event happening on that date. Cliff dismisses it.
Got it. And the other rejection was stronger, about a dark star anomaly theory.
Yes. Particularly as presented by someone named Warren Weston on Greg Hunter's show, I think it was.
And why the rejection? What were the points?
Several things. First, it's framed as coming from what Cliff calls Gratology, which he defines in a very specific way. We can get into that.
Okay.
Second, the criticism is that it relies too much on literal Bible interpretations. And third, a major point was its technical understanding, or lack thereof.
How so?
It apparently misunderstands the capabilities of, like, 1980s supercomputers compared to modern tech. So the technical basis of the dark star theory is called into question as being outdated or just wrong.
Okay, so that term you mentioned, Gratology, this seems key. It's contrasted with ontology. Can you break those down?
Sure. So as Clif presents it, Gratology is basically the common materialistic view, the belief that physical reality, dirt, grit, suns, planets, exists on its own, totally separate from consciousness,
Yeah.
matter first.
Right, the sort of standard scientific assumption for a long time.
Pretty much. Then ontology, in this context, is the opposite idea. It's the view that this reality, this materium, as he calls it, is actually made of consciousness. Consciousness is primary, and the physical world is a manifestation or construct within consciousness.
Okay, that's a fundamental shift in perspective.
Huge shift. And the argument in the source is that the gratological view, the matter-first view, is dying out because it's, well, stuck.
Stuck how?
It's not leading to big breakthroughs anymore.
Yeah.
He points to science being in a sort of cul-de-sac since Einstein, maybe because things like Tesla's work were suppressed and because we're relying on what he calls flawed physics.
He uses pretty strong language about Einsteinian physics, doesn't he?
Yeah, he calls it absolute shit, basically. Rooted in grit, in that materialist assumption.
Oh, wow. Okay. And this criticism extends to fundamental constants.
Right. Things like Planck's constant, the speed of light.
Mm.
They're described as fudge factors.
Fudge factors, meaning?
Meaning they're just numbers needed to make the math work because the underlying assumptions in experimental designs based on that gratological view are flawed, like using cubes instead of tetrahedrons in models or ignoring the ether.
Ah, the ether, that old concept. It comes back here.
It does. There's a mention apparently of Einstein himself saying something like his theories wouldn't hold up if the ether was real.
Interesting.
And there's even an assertion that certain groups have been trying to actively disprove the ether since the 1870s, specifically to push this gratological material-only viewpoint.
So the alternative, this ontological view, the claim is it makes things simpler. No need for constants.
That's the idea. If reality is consciousness-based, the math works differently, maybe more elegantly. And the claim is that this ontological view is self-revealing now. It's emerging.
Okay, so how does this shift in understanding reality connect back to the UAPs and maybe communicating with, well, whoever is driving them, or even a higher consciousness?
This is where Qualia come in.
Qualia, define that for.
Okay, so Qualia are described as the smallest, most basic units of meaning that can be passed between consciousnesses.
Like
a single word, or a wink, or a nod.
wait.
A tiny packet of shared understanding.
Got it.
And in this ontological framework, Qualia are how communication happens. Not just person to person, but also between us and this supreme consciousness, which is sort of equated with the materium, with reality itself.
So things like dreams, or maybe even using tools like tarot or astrology.
Yeah.
Those could be ways we receive or interpret these qualia.
That's presented as a possibility, yeah. Ways to maybe tune into that level of communication. It also reframes God, doesn't it?
How?
Within this view, God isn't necessarily the ultimate creator outside of everything, but rather any very powerful consciousness existing within the materium. He references the Zohar, the Jewish mystical text, suggesting an interpretation where God created the universe from his own being, fitting this idea.
Okay. And the reason this ontological view is supposedly revealing itself now is to help us communicate with aliens.
That's the connection being drawn. The idea is that advanced spacefaring civilizations already understand and operate based on ontology, their technology like UAPs that can apparently travel instantly. That tech is seen as proof they get it. They aren't bound by our grit-based physics. So for us to effectively communicate or interact, we need to catch up to that understanding.
Which leads to a critique of our current sci-fi ideas about space travel, right? Like giant starships.
Exactly. If you can travel instantly, why build massive, slow battleships carrying thousands? It becomes illogical from an ontological perspective. The whole paradigm of space travel changes.
And this critique extends to people in the UFO field and even Elon Musk.
Yeah, figures like Courtney Brown, Corey Goode, David Wilcock, Pete Peterson, William Tompkins. Their narratives are described as grit-bound, stuck in that old materialistic way of thinking about aliens in space.
And Musk's Mars plan.
Predicted to fail, basically, because it's based on those same supposedly outdated concepts of blasting rockets through physical space over long periods.
So if contact happens, the prediction is it won't be like in the movies with governments meeting ambassadors.
Probably not. The idea is that beings with this level of tech would likely find interacting with individuals more efficient. Our large governmental structures, our management structures, are actually described pretty bluntly as, well, stupid and retarded in their ability to handle something like this.
Wow, okay. Direct.
So contact might be more personal, more individual, bypassing those bureaucratic layers entirely.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, the source talks about the current time as the summer of emergence. Secrets coming out.
Yeah, that's the term used. We're supposedly in a period where things kept hidden are being revealed at a faster pace. The Epstein list is given as one example.
And how does this connect to, say, UAPs or funding?
There's a potential link drawn between this emergence and the shutdown of funding for secret black projects.
Oh.
Through this idea of unaccounted for Doge money, trillions of dollars allegedly used to fund these projects off the books that are now being tracked or stopped.
Trillions. That's a staggering amount.
Yeah, the source speculates the group tracking it, the Doge group, found maybe $5 trillion initially, but hints the total could be much, much larger. And stopping that flow could directly impact these long-running secret programs.
And the ontology fits in here how? Providing guidance.
By providing Qualia, yeah.
Okay.
Those subtle hints or communications from the materium itself are supposedly helping guide individuals through this period of upheaval and revelation.
So we might expect more weirdness. Market crashes alongside UFOs.
That seems to be the prediction. Increased volatility, financial stress, more UAP sightings. It's all part of this old paradigm, the gripey narradigm, as he called it, dying off.
You mentioned Shuhari earlier. Mastery. How does that fit?
Shuhari is that Japanese martial arts concept about stages of learning. Follow the rules, break the rules, transcend the rules.
Right.
The idea here is, as the old systems break down, true masters people who understand the fundamental principles, maybe ontological ones, will emerge. They can operate outside the collapsing frameworks.
They're the ones who can navigate this.
Yeah.
And maybe interact with, well, others who operate that way.
That seems to be the implication. They've moved beyond the grit-bound limitations.
Okay, let's talk economics then. There's a prediction of a downturn and a move away from credit.
Yeah, several signs are pointed out. The financial system is seen as weakening, partly because that alleged black project money is being cut off, but also just high consumer debt.
What signs specifically?
Things like falling real estate listings, mortgages getting harder to get, and rising bad loans, especially mentioned for the U.S. West Coast.
And this idea about cash discounts becoming more common.
Right, because credit card processing fees are a burden for businesses, especially small ones. So the thinking is they'll increasingly incentivize cash.
We might see bigger differences between cash and credit prices, even at gas stations.
Potentially significant discounts, yeah. It would be a major reversal of the trend since the 70s, where credit became dominant.
And this is linked back to Nixon and the gold standard.
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah.
Nixon taking the U.S. off gold in '71. The rise of the petrodollar. That whole fiat system based on, well, agreement rather than tangible backing, it's implied that system is reaching its end of life.
Makes sense within this larger narrative of collapsing old structures.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
So, wrapping up, what about official disclosure, secret space programs? How does this view contrast with other narratives out there?
The expectation here seems to be for more real revelations about secret space programs, maybe about re-engineered tech, possibly forced out into the open because of this Doge activity cutting off the funding for secrecy.
Different from, say, the Corey Good narratives.
Yeah, those are implicitly or explicitly dismissed as part of the grit-bound thinking. The idea is the ontology itself is driving these convergences. Yeah, the UAP activity, the societal shifts, the economic stress, it's all clustering together. He calls it a combinoric effect. It's efficient, in a way. Overwhelms the old ways of thinking, the normie brain.
Because the old explanation, Gratology, is failing to keep up.
That's the core idea. Gratology is failing, the math is hard, the costs are high. Ontology supposedly offers an easier path, lower costs, new opportunities are emerging from it.
Okay, so quite a journey we've taken in this deep dive. We've covered increased UAP reports, this fundamental challenge between ontology and Gratology.
Right. Consciousness versus just matter.
Major potential shifts in society and finance, and this idea of reality itself communicating via Qualia.
You've basically got the condensed version now, the key themes Clif High has been focusing on recently.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to mull over. If we seriously consider this potential shift from a reality based purely on grit or matter to one fundamentally based on consciousness, what assumptions that you hold, maybe without even realizing it, might start to look different?
Yeah, assumptions about the world, about existence itself. And what does it mean if the universe, the materium, might actually be sending us signals, these qualia, to navigate what's being called this summer of emergence?
Lots to think about there. We hope this gives you some fuel for further thought and maybe some exploration on your own. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.